Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. I'm Mr. Jakes. Where can I even start with Digan no Maseki? Well, the title means the Magic Stone of Digan, and it's quite a unique RPG from 1988. If by any chance you've heard of this game, it's probably because of its art designer, Naoyuki Kato, a highly acclaimed sci-fi artist in Japan. You may have seen his art on the covers of other games like Super Alesta and the Japanese version of Guardian Legend. And interestingly, he even has a connection to my previous video, since he was the illustrator for many of the Legend of the Galactic Heroes novels, and is often credited as a mech designer for the series, and for Space Battleship Yamato. But for today's game, Digan no Maseki, Kato teamed up with sci-fi writer Yuuhei Yamaguchi, who wrote the story and designed the game. It takes place within the world of his sci-fi novel series, Gdleen. Yep, I'm gonna pronounce it Gdleen, since that's what the Japanese pronunciation seems to suggest. This logo is supposed to be the letters Gdleen. It took me forever to see it. And incidentally, Gdleen also had a one-episode anime OVA based on it. That anime was made in order to promote a Super Famicom game of the same name, released in spring 1991, making it incidentally the very first Super Famicom RPG ever released. It's not really a sequel to the PC-88 game I'm talking about today, since it's from completely different developers, but you could certainly consider it to be a related title. Hopefully this isn't too confusing. I myself am completely unfamiliar with the Gdleen series, so let's just take a look at this PC-88 game today and judge it on its own merits. This is Digan no Maseki on the PC-88. Wow, I've never seen a PC-88 game with a case like this. The game was released by Artec, which writer Yuuhei Yamaguchi set up himself as a subsidiary of a larger Japanese software company called Random House, completely unrelated to the publishing company Penguin Random House in the US. Wow, it seems everything requires a complicated explanation today, doesn't it? Another thing some of you are probably looking at here is the price. 10,000 yen. I mean, for most Japanese at the time, that felt like paying $100 US. Back then, PC games in Japan were usually sold in low quantities and at a premium price, but this one seems particularly pricey. That might be one of the reasons why this game didn't sell particularly well and isn't considered to have been much of a hit. There was a budget version released later though, for less than a third of the original price. Inside, first there's a survey card, and then not one, but two manuals. The first is in full color and explains the legends and different regions of Gdleen. Next, there is a very brief and totally insufficient manual on how to actually play the game. Incidentally, a lot of the information here, including how to watch the opening in the PC-88 version, is incorrect, and they had to include this insert with a whole bunch of corrections. These clear disc sleeves are indeed the way this game was originally shipped. The game comes on 6 floppy disks. The one labeled Disk 7 is actually just a blank disk that you can use to create a user disk. And to do so, you have to boot Disk 2. So it says to insert a blank disk in drive 2 and press return. I'll just use a regular blank disk. This music you're hearing, by the way, is the actual music it plays during the userdisk creation utility. I love how they included BGM here, even though they didn't have to. It sounds so amazing, by the way, that I had to go and double check that this game doesn't use the soundboard too. It doesn't, but damn, they did a good job with the soundtrack in this one. It's really no wonder, since the FM sound in the PC-88 version was arranged by none other than Hitoshi Sakimoto, who for game music fans probably needs no introduction. He didn't actually compose any of the music in this game, but simply worked to make sure it sounded great on the PC-88. While Sakimoto is well known for his later game music compositions, he was also quite a wizard with FM sound chips. I mean, he did the music for Gauntlet 4 on the Genesis. But now that we've finished creating that user disk, let's watch the opening sequence next, by inserting disks 1 and 6 and resetting. Uh-oh, let's see if it decides to work on the second try. So here we have all that Naoyuki Kato artwork. They went for a sort of grainy looking digitized style that reminds me a lot of Western PC games. I'd say they did a pretty admirable job making it work on the PC-88, but it definitely isn't the best looking version of the game. The story here in the beginning is actually pretty simple. An ordinary couple from a small village are getting married. Meet the happy newlyweds, Abilia and Dino.
Hey, stop! Cut it out, Dino! You hear me?
It's a tradition for couples in this land to visit the Spring of Revelation as part of their honeymoon. There they are told that their future will be one of unimaginable pain and hardship that will tear the two of them apart. However, this is a test, and if they can persevere and continue to believe in each other throughout the ordeal, they'll come out living a more fulfilled life together in the end. So, shaken by this unexpected news, the two of them return home. Time to replace Disk 1 with the user disk to play the game. So we're immediately taken to a scene at Dino and Abilia's house. Abilia has come down with a very strange illness where she seems to be sprouting branches. It's a little easier to see in the PC-98 and MSX versions. It's possible that they're supposed to be wires, though, considering the transformations she'll be going through later. Illustrator Naoyuki Kato has kind of a thing for women merging with machinery. I guess maybe he saw that childhood nightmare fuel scene in Superman 3? And I have a feeling that Yamaguchi wrote the plot of this game especially with Kato in mind. So anyway, the doctor doesn't have any idea how to help Abilia, and says that Dino had better find someone who knows something about magic. Their maid Lazdek says to leave Abilia to her, and so with that we insert Disc 3 and Drive 2 to set off on the quest. We'll begin by gathering information around town. It's tough to talk to NPCs in the PC-88 version. You have to completely stop walking and then press space to get their attention. And then, rather than seeing a single message like in other RPGs, you're given a list of key words to ask about, which expands the further you get into the game. Most NPCs don't have anything to say about most of the words, though. By the way, don't bother trying to plug a controller into the joystick port. It won't work. You can press Enter on the keyboard to open the menu, where you can save to the user disk's single save slot, as well as make adjustments to the text and scrolling speed. By scrolling speed, it actually means walking speed. Space is cancel. Luckily, you can also use Z and X instead of Enter and Space, which is perfect for my keyboard emulator. It doesn't like having Enter assigned to the trigger buttons for some reason. We finally get some useful information from the mayor of the town. He says that in order to save Abilia, Dino should seek out a great wizard named Taoho. I hear that Lake Taoho is lovely this time of year. Taoho actually is the first character mentioned in the game who was also in the Gdleen novels. To find Taoho, the mayor says we should visit Edona, the capital city of the country of Mayor. You heard that right, the mayor tells us to go to Mayor. They're spelled the same. So I try to leave the town, and it says I'm going to need an item called a Ring of Prayer in order to communicate with people in the other countries. So I go to the item shop to buy one. 2,000 gold? Damn, there goes most of my money I started with. Next it says I need food and a horse. Like in many games, you need to buy food in order to survive, and an especially large amount gets used up when you travel between locations. And as for a horse, what happened to the one he was riding in the opening? That's another 2,000 gold I'm going to need. So anyway, the one thing you're going to need at the beginning of this game is money. But with no monsters to fight yet, how am I going to get any? By doing jobs. Yay! You can do one job a day to earn a bit of cash. You lose a little HP and some time goes by. The day-night cycle is represented by these pink circles that fill up at the top of the screen. As time goes by, Dino will begin to get tired. His sobriety meter will go down if he starts to get tired or hungry. Or drunk. SOB?
All the kids in Springfield are SOBs.
Luckily, in this first town of Cartea in Oro, Dino can just use his home as a free inn, and also have a good meal while he's there, reducing the need to consume his stock of food. I know I'm going to need a lot of money early in the game here, and so begins my life as a day worker. Wow, well digger sure sounds like a terrible job in the days before machinery. What's worse?
Will I ever move a piano again?
Oh my goodness gracious, no.
In the PC-88 version, threatening or killing vagrants makes for a lucrative side hustle, since they'll actually give you some pretty good money. But in the PC-88 version, you can't threaten them, and even the ones that you can fight are difficult to beat and don't leave any money. Still, I tried doing it a few times to increase my stats. In this game, there are no level ups, you just kind of get better gradually by fighting battles. But for the most part, it's just a daily grind doing jobs. Abelia is always such a trooper, waiting at home, apologizing that she's unable to help, and telling Dino not to worry about her. It's alright, honey, I'll find a cure for you soon. Now back to my daily grind of gig work and fighting bums on the street. Once you've finally got a ring of prayer, a horse, some food, and lots of spare cash cause you're gonna need it soon, it's time to move on to Mayor. There's no overworld in Digan no Maseki. You just select your destination from the menu. Mayor is a huge town. Just walking around will quickly use up a whole day, and you'll then have to pay money for an inn. Either that or camp out in town and risk getting robbed. There's so much here, and what you need to do to progress is not obvious at all. While the later parts of the game are actually pretty smooth sailing, the most difficult part to figure out, in my opinion, is right here at the beginning. The pacing of this game is pretty terrible. You have to actually go to this information seller and pay 800 gold for information. He'll tell Dino that he should see a governor in town named Caron. Caron? But he won't be able to meet him easily since outsiders aren't allowed into his mansion. However, he knows that a female servant of his has been going around to the inns in town searching for someone lately. So the next time you stay at an inn... Okay, sorry for having to censor another game. I can't take my chances getting demonetized, okay? This is the first battle in the game that you actually have to fight, and it's not easy. You'll probably need to buy some better equipment or healing items before you can win. When you do, you'll find out she is indeed the servant of Caron who has been looking for Dino, but was attacked by that drunk monster outside the inn. Actually, I shouldn't call him a monster since that's just one of the humanoid races of beings living in Gdleen. Anyway, she'll let us into Caron's mansion. There we get a huge exposition dump, so buckle in. Caron is the leader of a secret order of knights at war with the land of Bavaris, and their leader, Goria. Goria, dun dun dun, you're always on. Okay, that's enough of that. Recently, Goria tricked the great wizard Taoho by giving him a broken magic stone of Digan. Remember, that's the title of the game, Digan no Maseki. Usually the real stone is kept inserted into the base of the great tree of the world in order to control the tree's power. But when Taoho inserted the broken stone, instead of continuing to protect the world, the tree went out of control, and Taoho lost his memories, becoming unable to speak. Caron believes that the great tree is also the cause of Abelia's strange illness. So what we need to do next is find Taoho and return him to normal. Caron thinks the one who can do that is a doctor named Maran, but in the meantime we're introduced to a wizard named Malra, who will serve as Dino's first additional party member. Whew, that's a lot of new names to remember. Okay, so first we've got to find Dr. Maran in town, so Dino sets off with Malra. Marla? Whatever. Maran is easy enough to find in town, and so now suddenly we have 3 party members. Hope I have enough money to buy equipment for all of them. If we set off to find Taoho right away, we'll quickly find the monsters in this new area are too strong. So in order to get better, there's actually a pair of double dungeons we can do here in Mayor. There's a reward for finding a sacred orb in one of the towers. So weirdly, these two towers that aren't really part of the main story are the first dungeons. You'll be attacked by random battles, and for some of them you can choose whether you want to fight or not. These I always decline to fight, but there are plenty of others where the enemies get the drop on you and you'll have no choice. The battle system is kind of a distance-based one, where you sometimes have to move forward to get close enough to the enemies. Characters can also fall back to the rear when they're low on HP. The only character you directly control is Dino, but at the beginning of each turn you get the option to call out to one of your party members and tell them what you want them to do. For the most part, I found myself just clicking through the battles to finish them. It isn't much of an engaging battle system, to tell you the truth. It's game over if Dino dies, and you'll have to pay a hefty fee to revive your other party members, so I just saved often and loaded my game if they ever died. There's a status ailment called Injured, which will make party members fight a little worse. Characters become injured right away in practically every battle, so there's no avoiding it. While you have Moran in the party, he'll automatically treat and cure injured party members as you walk around. Malra can heal the party with his magic, and if he runs out of MP or your characters become sleepy, you can actually camp anywhere in the dungeons and be fine. At least it never gave me any issues anyway. You'll obtain food and money from some of the battles, though doing jobs is generally a faster way to make money. There's an option to divvy up your current funds evenly among the party, or temporarily give it all to Dino if you need to buy something expensive. Apparently the party members become less cooperative if you don't give them their fair share, and non-required party members may even run off during the night with your money. You'll also have to divide food, and everyone needs their own horse to travel between locations without becoming extremely hungry or tired. So after defeating a couple bosses in the towers, we can find that sacred orb we were asked to find, as well as 2 other items you'll need later in the game. After collecting our reward for the orb, I think it's about time we head back to the first town to check on Abelia. Well, she's not looking good. Abelia's condition will worsen throughout the game after passing certain points in the story. Anyway, hang in there, honey. We've got to head now to a new location called Dragon's Field to find Taoho. This area is just a dungeon that I spent hours trying to find my way through. I could have really used maps for this game, but couldn't find any. Also, the only playthrough video I found was for the PC-88 version, which has different map layouts, so I was on my own here. I could have sworn I searched everywhere and just could not find the way through this one. No, you're joking. This is the way through? Well, good thing I figured it out, I guess. After that, this dungeon just keeps going on, with a couple of changes in scenery. In this area, we'll find a boarded up shack with a sign saying that they've moved to the forest to the west. There, by examining a certain tree, we'll find a treehouse with Taoho and his wizard caregiver inside. Here we can finally rest and have a good meal. But Moran doesn't seem to know how to cure Taoho's condition after all. We're told by the wizard there that maybe the black dragon who lives nearby knows how. So we'll make our way there with a confused and worthless Taoho in the party. We'll try to just keep him alive. After more dungeon, we find the dragon, and he says we should be able to heal Taoho after we unlock Moran's true power at the Shrine of the Sun in Eurodona. But first, let's make our way out of this long dungeon again so we can check on Abelia. Yep, she's not looking too well. We've got another big city to explore, populated by a race of fairies. We find the Shrine of the Sun, but outsiders aren't allowed in. So wandering around, we find a fairy in need of help in the wooded area to the west of town. After saving her, Lilifa introduces herself and is very disappointed to learn that Dino is married. Lilifa is apparently supposed to be the comic relief of the game, and the narrator, I guess it's the narrator, tells us that she's sure to make the adventure a fun and lively one. So now that we have a fairy in the party, we can enter the shrine. Let's put a spoiler warning here, I guess. Moran takes part in a naked fairy dance ceremony which unlocks his true power. Then it says that he temporarily transforms into some sort of slimy amoeba-type creature, which is his true form. Wish there was an illustration for this.
Oh, no clip? Oh, thought we had a clip. Nope, okay.
The slime envelops Taoho's body and restores him finally to normal. Taoho is horrified to learn that he was tricked by Goria and what he has done to the Great Tree. He says that now the only way to learn the whereabouts of the real magic stone of Digan is by confronting Goria in person. And so we travel to the city of Rigold in Bavaris, where we are immediately stopped by a mysterious character from the Gdleen novels, named Are Blue. He says that he has been waiting here in order to kill Dino, by order of the god and creator of Gdleen, Gavana. Taoho says that's nonsense, since Gavana is a good and gentle god. But before we can fight Are Blue, we are saved by another character from the novels, General Duran of Bavaris. Duran. He won't tolerate any unnecessary killing here in his city, and decides to betray Goria and save Dino. He says Goria is located deep in the dungeon here, but first he knows where Dino can get some much better equipment like his in the city of Meldorn. Before going there, let's check on Abelia again. Oh no, this is not good. We fight the creature, and afterward the servant Lazdek tells us with her dying breath that Abelia suddenly transformed into the creature and attacked her. Dino can't believe the creature is really Abelia, and thinks he knows a certain race of beings from far away that resemble the creature. Surely one of them was put there in her place by the Great Tree. But he hurries on to Meldorn. In this city I met an NPC who seemed to have a cold, and also found a brothel. Apparently from both it is possible to catch certain status ailments, and colds can even be passed to the rest of the party. More attempts to turn this into a realistic adventurer simulator. In town, Duran shows Dino a secret shop where he can buy the same awesome sword and shield he has. They ask for all of Dino's money in exchange, so it's a good idea to use it all up before coming here. But when they step out of the shop, Lilifa is suddenly struck by an arrow. Hey, this reminds me of that part in Emerald Dragon. Digan no Maseki did it first. The attacker turns out to be a male fairy who's in love with Lilifa, and who meant to kill Dino out of jealousy. They carry out an emergency blood transfusion between the two fairies, and Lilifa is saved, but she won't be around for the rest of the game. Wow, she surely did make the adventure a fun and lively one, for about 2 seconds. Literally the only battle I fought with her in the party was that one with the creature at Dino's house. Moran also remains with Lilifa to take care of her. So back to Bavaris. In addition to buying better equipment for everyone, I decided to hire a mercenary to fill one of the empty party slots. This can be done for a fee throughout the game. Say hello to Shuffle Nerds. Say hello to Gamak. So it's the final dungeon. It was a little hard to find the way through, but overall not too bad. After the first part, we meet Goria already, who will answer all our questions. We learn that Goria gave Taoho the broken magic stone on purpose to mess up the Great Tree, which he was ordered to do by the god Gavana. There are actually 2 Gavanas, but Goria says the one he follows is the true one. And guess what? The world of Gdleen where they live is actually a giant spaceship built by Gavana, carrying people who originally came from an actual planet in ancient times. They just don't realize now that they're on a ship. And so the twist is basically the same as the third entry in another much more well-known RPG series released 2 years later, which I won't name, though I'm sure someone is typing it in the comments section right now. I wonder if the developers of that game played this one or read the novels. As for Abelia, Goria says that she's probably been sucked completely into the Great Tree by now. The only ones who can fix the magic stone of Digan are the people of Kordarn, which is the remote control center of Gdleen. It can be reached through the portal of time behind Goria. When Dino and the others try to leave and head through, Goria says he can't have that. But Duran quickly puts an end to Goria, for the future of Bavaris, he says, and leaves the party. So it's through the portal of time and on to Kordarn, the last leg of the final dungeon. It's of course a futuristic themed area with robots to fight. After a bit of a confusing maze, we reach the final room of the game. In the PC-98 version, the last event activates when you enter the room, but in the PC-88 version, it took me a while to figure out you have to investigate the cold sleep chamber in the middle. Taoho says this is where Gavana lies in eternal sleep, and begins the ceremony to wake him, which of course just means pressing buttons on the chamber. But while he's doing that, Are Blue appears and reveals that he is actually a bionoid designed to protect Gavana by eliminating foreign intruders. And so the final battle is a one-on-one fight between Dino and Are Blue. In the PC-88 version, it can be beaten by just using a bunch of healing items. Are Blue is defeated and remarks that if Gavana hadn't been split into two, he could have been good friends with Dino. He wishes he had been born human. And with that, he collapses like a lifeless wooden marionette. Taoho succeeds in awakening Gavana, and we get our final round of reveals at the end of the game. First, Gavana apologizes to Dino for the whole ordeal with his wife, which was caused by their silly power struggle here in Kordarin, he says. Neither he nor the other are the real Gavana, but rather clones carrying on his spirit and knowledge respectively. Everything up to now is part of Project Gdleen. But the next part that the knowledge tried to carry out via Goria was started prematurely. They still mustn't intervene yet in the lives of the people of Gdleen, he says. He gives Taoho a new, working magic stone of Digan and tells him to place it in the tree. And for his final message, he tells Dino to heed the words of the Spring of Revelation. Dino and Abelia must trust in one another to keep their bond strong. And so in the ending sequence, Taoho removes the broken magic stone and places the new one in the tree. It immediately begins working normally again, and a chamber in the tree opens up. Dino, thank you, is all she says. And in the credits, there are a few interesting things to point out. Naoyuki Kato, credited here for concept assistance and CG finishing, is Naoyuki Kato's wife, as confirmed here in the staff messages at the end of the manual. And in the PC-88 version, and only the PC-88 version, Hitoshi Sakimoto is credited for both music arrangement and for creating the music driver called Terpsichorean. Music composition was by a team calling themselves Psychosonic, the most notable member of which is Yo Oyama. Psychosonic also did the music for Gdleen on the Super Famicom, though I believe Oyama was the only returning member. Oh, and to compose the ending theme, they got a fairly well-known singer and TV personality named Hirofumi Bamba, who had a few hits in the 80s and late 70s. The music in the game is generally very good. Some of it even sounds like Falcom music. Though if I were to nitpick, most of the tracks are not very long and on short loops. There's an occasional track here and there that's merely average, and the battle BGM, while a decent track if listened to on its own, became irritating to me after hearing it repeated over and over. The PC-88 version also has no sound effects aside from some rudimentary menu sounds using the beep channel, even in the battles. Each version of this game is so unnecessarily different from the others. It's like a different team of programmers was simultaneously creating each one of them from the ground up, without looking much at each other's work. The PC-98 version has a totally different FM arrangement of the soundtrack, despite using the same sound chip as the PC-88. Usually PC-88 and PC-98 versions of the same game sound exactly or nearly exactly the same, unless the PC-88 version uses the soundboard too, which Digan no Maseki does not. For whatever reason, Hitoshi Sakimoto wasn't involved in this version, and it doesn't use his music driver either. The music is widely agreed to be a huge downgrade from the PC-88 version, and it's made even worse by a completely unnecessary sound that gets emitted whenever Dino walks. Better just turn the sound effects off in this one. They're all just the beep sound channel anyway. The poor sound is a real shame, since otherwise this version has a lot of advantages. Kato's artwork looks significantly better with the color and resolution here. The buildings in the towns now have interiors you walk around in. The enemies are visible in the dungeons. You can actually choose which enemy you want to attack in the battles, and money has been made a little easier to earn. Still, as mentioned before, there are other more puzzling differences. Most of the town and dungeon layouts are different, with some towns being even more stupidly huge. And for some reason you can't use items in battle. I don't know when you're supposed to use them then, but at least the game seems to be properly rebalanced so you don't need them. In the end, it does at least feel a bit smoother and more finished overall than the PC-88 version. The MSX2 version has illustrations that some might actually prefer, cleaned up with more solid colors in some of them, while others I'd say look quite a bit worse than the PC-98 version. The character portraits are displayed much larger on screen though, and it has gamepad support, as is customary on the MSX. The game itself has been greatly simplified, with generally smaller towns and dungeon layouts, and tons of features removed. Battles have characters dancing around, like in an Ultima game. Worst of all though is that other than the opening and ending tunes, there's only the one BGM from the first town playing throughout the entire game with no sound effects. What the hell? The back of the game says there's FM sound support, but in fact there isn't. This is all just reused text from the back of the other two versions of the game. The MSX2 version has only one programmer listed in the credits, and while reportedly it is possible to get to the ending, the game was very likely released in an unfinished state. So you can either choose the PC-88 version for the music, or the PC-98 version for the graphics and maybe overall playability. Avoid the MSX2 version, unless you think trying to finish a mostly broken game sounds like fun. Maybe turn off the sound and listen to something else while you play it. Digan no Maseki is the kind of old game that people will talk about, but few are likely to play. The game oozes creativity and originality, so much so that even the main creator, Yuuhei Yamaguchi, admits he was throwing out ideas without much regard for what was actually possible on computers of the time. And the end result, he says, was a highly unorthodox RPG. Making your characters able to get sick, tired, or drunk is interesting, but it rarely happens in the game. And requiring your characters to eat, sleep, and even work to earn money is certainly realistic, but does it make for fun gameplay? The story is certainly epic, especially for 1988. I don't know if it was clear from my plot summary or not, but the game is really short. Almost criminally so for an RPG. It only took me 2 days of modest playtime to finish. The adventure consists of basically 3 long dungeons, 2 of which do have multiple varied areas, mind you, and 5 towns with no overworld. I'd venture to guess that Yamaguchi wanted to make the game longer, but time and resources were limited. Certainly at least spreading the dungeons out more evenly to give the game better pacing could have made it feel longer. Maybe that fairy character could have actually gotten her chance to shine. But I think the question in the end is if Digan no Maseki is a good RPG, and unfortunately for me the answer has got to be no. Still, the game has its moments, especially in the second half. I don't hate it, and it sure was one wild and interesting ride, albeit a very short one. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-88 Paradise. This game was a request from my longtime patron, Blissful Noise. I've also had lots of casual suggestions to do this one through comments, so it's probably a good thing I got around to covering it. An extra special thanks goes to all the other patrons and YouTube members scrolling by, too. Thank you, by the way, for taking the time to watch this video. This is your friend, Mr. Jakes, saying bye until next time.